I like to start with an awkward moment of silence. Bonjour, mon name is Matthew Crushane, bonjour, mon nom est Mathieu Crushane. Hello, my name is Matthew Crushane, and welcome to the International Joint Commission's public meeting to gather your input on the 2022 progress report of the parties. I've been brought on by the IJC as to assist with the facilitation of the 2022 public engagement on the prop. I would first like to introduce the International Joint Commission, IJC Commissioner, Commissioner, Henry Lickers, to provide us with an opening Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving. Mr. Lickers.
Good evening. I'm really honored to be here and to be able to speak to you all. Among our people, in order to be able to open a meeting of this type, we give greetings and thank yous to the things around us. And I know that from many seeing that you here, that you have your families that you're away from, and that we appreciate that you've been here away from those families. Your communities also look to you, because I can tell that you are the people in your communities that people look to. They look to you for support and help. We know that also that there are many other people in this world that need us. And so I ask you to bring your minds together and think about the people of this world. And can we agree that they are important to us? I ask you to think about the Mother Earth as she continues to carry out her responsibility to us and to all of creation. And we know that she is our mother, because if we look at the color of the soils of that world, we can find the colors of all of our skins. So we know that she is our mother. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the Mother Earth. And can we agree that she is important to us? Today we've had a lot of talk about the waters of this world. And we think about those waters as they refresh us and keep us. But there are also many creatures that live in that water. The fishes that are there, and they too depend upon us to carry out our responsibility to the waters of this world. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the waters and the fishes of this world, or the aquatic life that lives in that water. And can we agree that they are important to us? We also know when we turn our minds to the plants of this world, the thousands and thousands of different plants. The Haudenosaunee, my people, talk about the three sisters, the corn, beans, and squash, those plants that have nourished our civilization from the beginning of our time. But we also think about all of the other plants that are out there. And each of those plants have medicinal purposes that help us in many different ways, giving us nutrition. And sometimes when we're feeling poorly, they can help us as we feel ill. And then we think about the trees of this world, the trees that give so much of themselves that we may be able to live in comfort. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the plants of this world. And can we agree that they are important to us? We are not alone on this planet, and we live with many other creatures. In the morning at my home, I'm always happy to hear the crows, even at 4 o'clock in the morning when they decide that they want to get up and tell everybody that they're awake. There are other animals, the four-leggeds, that live in our own homes, and sometimes we call them our pets. But we treat them like our brothers and sisters. And so I say to you that all of the animals and birds of this world deserve the same respect. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the animals and birds of this world. And can we agree that they are important to us? Today, as we looked outside, we see the four great winds, the autumn winds beginning to blow around us. And soon the winter winds will come. And then the spring winds, and again the summer, and back to the fall again. And that cycle will repeat itself time and time again. It reminds us of the great thunderers that we hear in the sky. And the Haudenosaunee say that those are the voices of our grandfathers, as they tell us to be ever vigilant as we live upon this land, because the world is changing. And as it changes, we must be ready to adapt to those changes. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the four great winds and the voices of those grandfathers as they alert us. And can we agree that they are important to us? We know this morning that we saw our elder brother, the sun, rise as he has done day after day, millennium after millennium, never ceasing in his responsibility to us and to all of creation. That we could carry out our responsibilities thus would truly be a wonderful thing. So I ask you to bring together your minds and think about our elder brother, the sun, and can we agree that he is important to us? This evening, we'll see the grandmother moon as she turns her face to us every 28 days. And that 28-day cycle is the cycle of all female things upon this world. And without that 28-day cycle, there would be no children. And this would truly be a lonely place. But she is also very powerful. And she has the ability to move all of the waters of this world, even the waters of the first environment, the womb. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the grandmother moon, and through her, all female things upon this world. And can we agree that she is important to us? When we look into the skies at night, we see the stars. And the Haudenosaunee say those are our aunties and uncles. And they're looking down upon us and watching us as we carry out our responsibilities to the world. But they also tell of events that will occur in our year as the constellation move across the skies. But they are constant in their watching of us and hoping that we will carry out our responsibilities. So I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the stars. And can we agree that they are important to us? We know that this is also a spiritual world. And our people say that there are many different spirits that surround us. The Haudenosaunee talk about sacred beings. And we say that if there's ever a quandary or a question that we have that seems so deep that it befuddles our mind that we can't think of what the solutions will be, all we have to do is to look deep into our hearts and our souls, and the four great sacred beings will come to us to show us how to live in peace and harmony upon this world. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the spiritual world that surrounds us. And can we agree that they are important to us? In our lives, we all have had great teachers that have taught us many, many lessons about how to work together, how to cooperate together. Not all of those teachers have been human teachers. Many of the animals can also teach us. And we say that in our own communities, we sometimes should listen to the smallest voices, for they too can be great teachers. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the teachers of this world. And can we agree that they are important to us? We have come to a place where we say that we'll light our council fire. And as a Seneca and a Haudenosaunee, I say to you, I also take a stout cord that binds us together in this place, that we may be able to carry out our responsibilities, not only to the world around us, but to each other. And would they be able to work together for these things? So now we say that those simple words have been created and been spoken. I call on you to think about the things that I might have left out, because I'm just a man and I may make mistakes. And so I ask you as my friends to send out greetings and thank yous to the things that I might have forgotten. And so now we're ready to start our meeting. But I call on you one last time to bring together your finest thanksgiving and your finest thoughts that will pile in a huge pile before us to send to the Creator of all things for the beauty that surrounds us. Go.
Miigwech, Henry. Next, please welcome IJC Canadian Section Chair, Pierre Bellin.
Thank you, Mathieu, for your facilitation today, and good evening, everyone. I'm Pierre Bellin, the Chair of the Canadian Section of the International Joint Commission, and thanks all of you for taking your time to be here with us today. And thank you, Henry, for opening our meeting. The IJC acknowledges that the land on which we gather tonight is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement and directly adjacent to Alderman Treaty territory. We have with us this evening several dignitaries who are welcoming us to Niagara Falls. I welcome Chief Mark Hill of the Six Nations of the Grand River to say a few words.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome First, to begin, I always have to acknowledge the words spoken by Henry in starting us off in this meeting and important discussions in a good way. And as we always refer to in our Haudenosaunee culture, it's starting off in making sure that we're constantly referencing the good mind and how the good mind is an important piece of any work that we do. So I want to say nyawa to Henry, and also I'll recognize that Henry comes, we share the same territory of 6 nations of the Grand River Territory. Again, also wanted to say nyawa and say really thank you to the acknowledgement. I know it's always been challenging at times, especially at international gatherings and commissions like this, because we don't always get to this level. And I think it's really important to have that recognition as we are all gathering on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and proud Haudenosaunee territories, and as well as you referenced the important treaty of the dish with one spoon. So again, I want to say nyawa for that. I come to you this evening again to bring greetings and welcome you all to this event, and it's been a great honor. I had the opportunity to speak yesterday at the Great Lakes Opening Forum itself, and from that point, I was really having a lot of reflections in wanting to know what is the best way forward, because when we talk about not just the Great Lakes and water in general, we know that that's the sustainer of life. We know as Indigenous people the sacredness to the water and what that means to our people and what it means for all of us as humans. And I think that's the most important piece that I was reflecting back upon, of not only just having the privileges that we do and the advantages at times that we take of with the reference of water. And so for me, I wanted to share a little bit of my experience at 6 Nations and what we've been dealing with for a number of years in relation to, again, not specifically the Great Lakes, but water in general. We come from the largest First Nation in Canada. We have roughly almost about 30,000 population. And we still to this day, in the year of 2022, do not have access to clean drinking potable water. We have at least 2,500 homes, and roughly less than 5% of those homes actually have running water. In the largest First Nation of the most prosperous country in this world. And for me, when you come onto these types of stages and you have these types of opportunities, regardless of who's watching in the audience, it's always important for me to speak from the heart of the realities of what my people have to endure while regular Canadian citizens have water to their homes. And so for me, it's really being able to bring the awareness across the board. It's really being able to have the recognition and the acknowledgement at these levels of conversations. When we talk about borders, when we talk about the waters, we know that the waters are going to continue to flow. And just like our people, we still assume that same flow of water as no borders exist. And so that's the important message that I bring to you this evening, and having really that utmost respect of really being involved in these conversations, being a part of, again, the discussions, but also a part of the solutions. And so every time I have an opportunity, it's not to look at calling out any government and what we don't have, but rather how we're going to get the job done and the solutions that we do have. And so that's something, again, at 6 Nations that we'll continue to do. And just another point that I wanted to mention, we've been doing a lot of work. We've been building upon our territory as best as we can in terms of progress, just much like even Mr. Mayor and the falls that you had mentioned in your speech yesterday. It's important to make sure that we're continuing to progress communities. And we look at economy, we look at all the good things that communities need to thrive. And again, when we go back to the basics of those good things, those are the things, again, for me, that I want to continue to push upon the realities of what it is for an Indigenous person still living in this country today. And so with that being said, again, we've been working at this problem of not having access to clean water for a lot of our long time of our period, our history. So we decided to make some solutions. We have to be a part of that. And so short-term wise, we've partnered up with great people, experts, much like yourselves in this field, who know what to do, who know and can be a part of solutions. And part of those solutions is a short-term solution to at least filtration systems that don't cost a lot of money, that government doesn't have to look to allocate certain funds to say, well, I still don't have enough funding to get you water. So those are the types of questions that I bring and really awareness to these types of events. Because at the same time, while we're making those short-term solutions and while political ping pong goes back and forth, we're still making sure that our people have the same opportunities as everybody else. And I think that's the most important message for me today that I wanted to share. Again, coming with that good mind, coming solution-oriented. We partnered with the Dreamcatcher Charitable Foundation. It's called. If you want to know more on the project, I encourage you rather to Google the Dreamcatcher Charitable Foundation Water Filtration Initiative. It's partnered again with our elected council, still always recognizing, as well as our traditional governance, our Haudenosaunee Confederacy chiefs, as well as our clan mothers. We all play a role, and I think it's, again, a true honor and privilege to be here with you all this evening, to really be able to welcome you all to, again, our traditional territories, and how we could be a part of solutions. And that's exactly what my message was here this evening. But also to want to encourage you in terms of these discussions and these levels of discussions, that regardless, again, of the protection of the source of water that we all utilize and need, we have to look at the relationship to that water and to the land and what that means for all of us as humans. We have a long, I think, course ahead of us, a long journey, even when it comes to the topic of climate. The list goes on, but at the end of the day, I think it's all one planet. We're all one human, and we all have the work to do. So again, appreciate each of you. Want to say Nyawa for the opportunity to join you, and thank you.
Thank you. And next, if you are from this region, you certainly know your member of provincial parliament. This is not his first time that he was elected. So if you want to say a few words, please. Wayne Gates.
Thanks very much. You okay?
Oh, you have.
I got a mic here. I got a short mic. It kind of matches my personality a bit. First of all, I want to say to my brother from Six Nations, in a country as rich as Canada and a province as rich as this province is, you should not be waiting 16 years to have drinkable water on Six Nations. And as politicians, we failed Six Nations. And whatever I can do to correct that situation, we should be doing it. Water is a basic need, and thank you for continuing to go around the province and heighten the awareness of it. It is so important. So I wanted to say that wasn't part of my speech. First, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and coming to Niagara Falls. A big thank you to the International Joint Commission for their work and for putting together this public meeting on such important topic. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but Niagara is one of the most beautiful communities in the entire country. Also, what better place to talk about water, protection, and our Great Lakes than just steps from the falls. Our closeness to the Great Lakes has always been a source of pride for me. A grouping of lakes that make up 20% or 1/5 the entire world surface water. The source of drinking water for tens of millions of Canadians and Americans, definitely something worth protecting. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement turns 50 years this year, signed in 1972. And in that time, I know we've seen a great deal of progress on identifying chemicals that have gone into our Great Lakes. We're seeing more and more chemicals, sometimes now referred to as forever chemicals. Chemicals that are chlorinated or fluorinated that are contaminating our Great Lakes. We need to be more aware of these changes. That's why this work is so important. Public input, that's what we're trying to have tonight, is so important to ensure this agreement and the work done within it continues to restore and protect our Great Lakes. Many of us here tonight are aware fresh water is in abundance all around Niagara, and it's essential to the survival of our community. From the drinking water, agriculture production, hydro generation, and even tourism. Even from a geographic sense, the Great Lakes have shaped Niagara. The Welland Canal, connected Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, was a spark that helped build our manufacturing base in Niagara for many, many years and grew so many communities in this area, both both here in the Falls and in the States. If we don't take this protection seriously, we are putting everything in jeopardy. That action can take many different forms, from detection of harmful chemicals, limiting commercial waste, reducing plastics, monitoring invasive species, and appropriately upgrading in the municipal infrastructure. We had an incident here in Niagara just a few years ago where we had raw sewage floating in the Niagara River at the base of the falls because of poor municipal infrastructure. We raised this at Queen's Park and saw some significant upgrades from the Niagara Falls Water Board in New York State, not from Queen's Park. We also need to be aware of the concern of the climate change and how this is affecting our Great Lakes. And we only have to look what's going on today, both in Canada and the States with climate change. Climate change may be one of the most pressing crises of our time. It will have so many effects on our environment and our world, including our Great Lakes. We have some beautiful beaches in Niagara, but with the increasing temperatures, we are bound to see more algae blooms and more days without swimmable beaches. Rising temperatures can also have serious effects on wildlife that call the Great Lakes their homes. It's an important ecosystem for our entire province. For these reasons, I'm happy to see this meeting taking place today, to see the work that the International Joint Commission continues to do on this front. We all know that water does not recognize borders. There's no line down the middle, and the bad water goes here, the good water goes here. It impacts all of us in both countries. So once again, I'd like to thank you for all the work that you have done for this meeting today and for all the work that will happen in the future in their pursuit of protecting one of the most abundant and precious freshwater source on the planet. Our future and the future of our kids and our grandkids depend on the protection of our fresh water. This work isn't optional, it's essential. And thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, and we are also honored to have Niagara Regional Chair Jim Brandley here with us today. I'm not sure that he will want to give a long speech, considering that he is on the campaign trail, is he not?
Thank you very much, and my job is to provide brief greetings this evening to all who are participating. First of all, I want to welcome members of the International Joint Commission who serve both countries in an exemplary fashion and who are charged with the responsibility of ensuring the implementation of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement and its progress. I want to welcome all who are members of the staff of the Commission, as well as those who are from outside of Niagara to Niagara, and nos amis qui parlent français, bienvenue à Niagara. I had the opportunity and privilege for 8 years to be the Minister of the Environment of the province of Ontario, so I'm very cognizant of, first of all, the role and responsibility of the International Joint Commission, and second, of the importance of the public input that is being sought this evening. It is through this public input, through various voices that will be with us in person this evening or electronically this evening, that we will have suitable commentary on the progress that's being made and the great need for further progress in the years to come. It is interesting that, of course, it is observed on many occasions that the border between Canada and the United States is alleged to be the longest undefended border of any two nations in the world. But responsibility goes beyond the border itself. It goes to our joint responsibility for water. Water that is drinkable, water that is swimmable, water that is fishable, I guess is the word we'd use, and water that is of economic benefit to all of us as well. So to the International Joint Commission, who every 3 years goes through the process of seeking input, we are very pleased to have you here in Niagara. It is recognized, and Wayne has made some reference to that, that in Niagara we are surrounded by water, Lake Ontario on the north, Lake Erie on the south, and the Niagara River joining the two, as well as the Welland Canal joining the two. And we had much work that has been done together with the national government and the provincial government in Ontario, the national government and the state government in New York State. And that is true across the country where there are joint waterways. We all collectively have that responsibility to protect those waters, to ensure that they're kept clean, to protect them from toxic contamination, no matter what mode it may be found in. And so this is an important step forward, as always, when we have this public input. And to all, I urge you out there not only to make the presentations this evening, they will be important in person and electronically, but on an ongoing basis to make known to the International Joint Commission and to the Government of Canada and the United States and the Government of the Province of Ontario and the Government of the State of New York, and also to local governments such as I represent, the Regional Municipality of Niagara. All of us collectively have a responsibility, and I'm absolutely delighted that you have selected Niagara Falls in the middle of the Regional Municipality of Niagara as the site of this particular hearing. I look forward with anticipation to hearing some of the input this evening and also to participating in a panel tomorrow. Lastly, I want to make mention of the fact, for those of you who might have access to it, TV Ontario, with Steve Paikin as host, this week is having guests from international, both Canada and the United States, let's put it that way, and across both countries, who are, again, electronically or in person in their studio, talking about the Great Lakes and the importance of, in this case, the Great Lakes, so there are other waterways of significance as well. So, members of the Commission, welcome. To others, welcome, and enjoy this evening, and take good account of that which is coming from the public. It's always important. Thank you.
Merci, merci Chair Bradley. Et maintenant, le dernier, mais pas le moindre, le maire de Niagara Falls, Jim Diodati. Please.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction and for everybody being here today. There's not a lot for me to say because the people before me have pretty much said it all, but I'll try to come up with a couple of things. First off, to everyone, I want to say welcome to Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is a member of the Great Lakes Cities Initiative. As a matter of fact, just prior to COVID, I was with a number of MPs and mayors around the Great Lakes as we went to visit. We went to Washington. We went to meet with dozens of senators and Congress members, and we were talking about the importance of the Great Lakes, as we heard mentioned earlier. Microplastics, the algae blooms, invasive species, shore erosion, and the list went on. And I thought we were going there to inform them of what was going on, and I have to tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. They were well aware of all of the issues, and they were actively working and campaigning on behalf of the Great Lakes. As our MPP said, 20% of the world's fresh water exists right here, and it brings us so much as it flows from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, creating those mighty cataracts. We're the #1 leisure destination in the world. We attract 20 million visits per year, and it gives us sustenance in so many ways, as our Indigenous brothers have shared with us. It gives us sustenance. It gives us food. It gives us drinking water. It gives us habitat for animals, for creatures. It brings us industry. It brings us tourism. It brings us, and 40,000 people, as I mentioned, count on tourism to feed their families, to pay their bills. And also, Niagara Falls is the birthplace of hydroelectric energy. It's where Nikola Tesla perfected his invention, where at one time, over 100 years ago, they referred to it as witchcraft, the idea of converting water to electricity. And today we understand how important that is with a number of power plants right here in Niagara Falls, one that we just converted to a museum, a spectacular, one of the newest, greatest attractions in Canada. And if you have an opportunity, definitely you want to check out the Niagara Parks power plant. So, and then when we take it a step further, we had some extra activity here. This year we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Nick Wallenda walking across the Horseshoe Falls. First time it ever happened. And that day, 10 years ago, June, It was the biggest event on the planet, where we had over 1 billion people tune in a 24-hour period. And what's important is we realize it's one of the most famous landmarks on this planet because of the water. And I've been many places around the world. I've been very blessed, and I've never yet met a person that didn't know what Niagara Falls was. I've never had to explain it's this place where water goes over a rock and creates mist. I've never had to say that. The minute I say Niagara Falls, big smiles. And oftentimes I hear, oh, one day before I die, or it's on my bucket list, or when I was little, I was able to visit. So I'm just grateful that we've got all these smart people and all this great public input to make sure that it's going to be here for future generations so that we can all enjoy it, and we can all benefit from its beauty. So on behalf of the City of Niagara Falls, I welcome all of you here. I'm grateful that you're in our city. Post-COVID, it was very hard on Niagara Falls, where tourism was so important. And when you turn the taps to tourism off, it has a devastating effect. And I can tell you, like adding water to a flower that needs it, we have come back alive. And I'm really grateful. I just thought of that now. That was pretty good, right? Not too bad. I just thought as I was, yeah. So on behalf of the city, I just want to say welcome everyone to Niagara Falls. We know you're going to have a very productive visit here, and we know there's going to be a lot of long-lasting benefits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all, our invitees, for your time to join us this evening. I've been the chair of the IJC since May 2019, and the other commissioners were appointed at the same time. Normally, there are 6 commissioners. Presently, the position of U.S. co-chair is vacant, and we have 3 other commissioners here, in addition to myself, and we may have Maryland Fair as well, the 3rd Canadian commissioner, online. So I will ask you 3 to introduce yourself briefly.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Rob Sisson. I'm a former mayor from a small town in Michigan, and was appointed, as Pierre said, in May 2019. I do live now in near Yellowstone National Park in Montana, but the Great Lakes are part and parcel of my body and my bloodstream, so it's great to be here.
My name is Henry Lickers, and I've been appointed by the Canadians to be a commissioner with the International Joint Commission, and I'm the first Indigenous commissioner after 115 years. I guess they needed us, so I'm happy, very happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lance Yohe. I'm a U.S. Commissioner. I live in north central U.S. in North Dakota, in a little town of Fargo, south of Winnipeg for Canadians, about 4 hours south of Winnipeg.
Thank you, Lance, Henry, Rob, and Maryland. Are you with us through the magic of internet tonight? No. Maybe she will join us later. Maryland is from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and she was appointed at the same time as all of us. Okay, so to start this session, I will first give a brief presentation about the IJC and why we are here today. IJC is a Canada-US organization created by treaty in 1909, the Boundary Waters Treaty, to help both countries find consensus solutions to issues facing our shared waters. Basically, the question came very early: who owns the water on the boundary, or the water that crosses on the other side? Well, nobody owns it really, but it is for the benefit of both countries. So we play a unique role in the Great Lakes. When the Canadian and US governments signed the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement 50 years ago, they gave us the responsibility to complete our own research, evaluate and assess government's progress, and engage with the public. This is a central function of the IJC, to engage with everyone: municipalities, people, indigenous communities, and all institutions in both countries. Through the agreement, Canadian and US governments set goals or objectives. These 9 general objectives are broad descriptions of water quality conditions. They describe the desired level of environmental quality that the governments work to protect. The objectives provide a basis for overall guidance of government's Great Lakes water quality management. They define the goals for the Great Lakes to be a source of safe, high-quality drinking water, to allow for unrestricted swimming, don't go too far offshore though, and other recreational uses, to be clean enough to allow for unrestricted consumption of fish and wildlife, to be free from harmful pollution, to support healthy and productive wetlands and habitats, to sustain resilient populations of native species. The goals are for the Great Lakes to be free from nutrients that promote the growth of harmful and nuisance algal blooms, to be free from the introduction and spread of aquatic and terrestrial invasive species that negatively impact the health of the lake ecosystems, and finally to ensure the groundwater is free of harmful contaminants. The agreement's goal is that the Great Lakes will be free of any conditions that may negatively impact the chemical, physical, or biological integrity of the lakes. To achieve these desired outcomes, the agreement has 10 annexes that are strategies for how to work together towards achieving these shared goals. Each of these annexes spells out the purpose, programs, and other measures and reporting that the Canadian and U.S. government must do. As you can see, many of these directly address the objectives from that last slide I showed, while others are covered more indirectly by programs in several annexes. For example, aquatic invasive species and fish and wildlife have dedicated annexes that describe programs to address any issues related to them. On the other hand, the goal of unrestricted consumption of fish and wildlife does not have its own annex. But the work to eliminate the underlying sources of contamination in fish is happening with the programs cleaning up toxic hotspots of historical pollution in the areas of concern, in the binational strategies for addressing key pollutants through the Chemicals of Mutual Concern Annex, another lake-wide program coordination under the LAMPS, or Lake-Wide Action and Management Plans. To be clear, the IJC does not implement the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. Our forum hosts this week, Environment and Climate Change Canada and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, work together to lead the Great Lakes Executive Committee, for short GLEC. Through GLEC, governments coordinate, implement, review, and report on how they put the agreement into action. Progress reporting is important to identify how close or how far governments are from achieving their goals. Since the 2012 update to the agreement, Canada and the U.S. report on their own progress every 3 years. I will not review tonight the contents of these progress reports, as they were the objective of the sessions yesterday that reviewed each of these documents. Their progress report of the parties, what we call the PROP, details what programs, practices, and activities they completed over the past 3 years. And their State of the Great Lakes report, that we normally call the SOGL, uses ecosystem indicators to measure and report on the status and trends of the health of the lakes. As part of our role, our oversight role under the agreement, we produce our own assessment of progress report during this 3-year cycle. We look at both reports that the government produced, and importantly, and this is why we're here today, we gather your input on the government's progress. In particular, we're here to get your feedback about the actions, programs, and other activities that governments highlighted in their 2022 PROP report that this year came before the actual forum, which was a great achievement. We consider your input as part of our assessment of how government's actions are achieving agreement objectives. In addition to this meeting, there was one this afternoon. There will be another one tomorrow morning, I think. But there are other ways you can engage and provide your input in person, virtually and in writing, until December 23. You can provide us input virtually this fall. On Tuesday evenings, starting in November, the IJC will be hosting a series of virtual meetings on Zoom where we will be looking for input, focusing on progress for each individual lake basin and separately for the St. Lawrence River. Therefore, the purpose of our engagement efforts is to fulfill our agreement responsibility to get your input on the 2022 progress report of the parties. But don't worry, this is not a quiz about what's in the progress report. Essentially, the prop is a detailed list of government-led activities that occurred between 2020 and 2022, contributing to the healthier, cleaner Great Lakes. In order for us to assess how these actions achieved more swimmable, fishable, drinkable, we need to better understand the outcomes of those actions. So that's where you all come in. We are hoping tonight to share with you, that you will share with us, your experiences with Great Lakes water quality. For example, what is the current reality that you're seeing on the lakes? What are the gaps in knowledge or capacity? What are the opportunities on the horizon? We will consider all your comments tonight, plus those that we will get until December 23, to transmit to the governors what is the view of the public in general on the progress that they say they have made. So thank you for your contributions, and without further ado, I'll ask Mathieu to explain what's next for today's meeting.
As stated by the Commissioner, the IJC goal is twofold: to fulfill its obligations as per the Great Lake Water Quality Agreement, to engage the public on the progress report of the parties, while gathering information that it can inform the development of the triennial assessment of progress. We have three kind of areas I'd like to explore, and the first one is always leaving it in the hands of the public to come with their messages. I know you have done some work at home and you see some concerns that are top of mind, and I didn't want to get in the way of the messages you wanted to bring to the IJC, so I wanted to express it as an articulation of the current reality. The second part, I was really trying to say, well, where are the gaps in terms of knowledge and capacity? How can governments assist communities, individuals, organizations in terms of their knowledge and their capacity to, again, meet the goals of the Water Quality Agreement? And then finally, I wanted to explore with the commissioners the opportunities for moving forward. I mean, one of the roles is to make recommendations to the parties moving forward. What might those opportunities be? Where do you see the chances or the opportunities for greatest impact on the lakes? What kind of capacities might you need in your organizations to allow you to move forward? I wanted to explore it in this kind of manner. So I would like to start, before I go there, I want to say for those who are unable to attend or do not get the opportunity to provide their input in the time available, I realize one of our challenges is always time, space, and resources to bring everyone together. So we've provided worksheets. So if you're here, the worksheets are on your tables. Each of the areas of exploration are available for participants to provide their input individually as organizations. So really what we want to do is provide an opportunity from when we started the engagement, which was a couple of weeks ago in Michigan, if I remember where the heck I am. And then from Michigan, this is our third. And the idea was, once we opened the conversation, we wanted it to be open for the entire session, for everyone to participate from the beginning to the end. So what I wanted to do so it's virtually, I think we have the access, the research is on your screen. So we do have a little, what are those things called? QR codes. QR codes that everyone can go directly to the link, and then the questionnaires are there. So really the idea here was you have to be here, therefore you participate. We wanted to open up wherever you are, and virtually you can participate in the conversation. I want to emphasize that we respect your prior informed consent to provide your input and feedback today. It is helpful for you to provide your name and email so that we can contact you about the next steps for this reporting progress. We also have the worksheets and hard copies available online, so if you would like to participate and give them back to your organization, perhaps split them in 3, give them off to experts, share the load in terms of providing your input into the IJC. Each of you were provided copies of the worksheets. Our virtual worksheet link is there. My colleague Jonathan's over here taking notes. We also have the session recorded, so we really want to cover it in terms of making sure we have captured all your input in the manner you want to provide it. Finally, please note that there's IJC staff roaming around taking pictures, and we're on video. I guess we're live and pictures are being taken. But Allison's in the back, and if you want a specific side only showing, or if this is your best side, or if you prefer not to have, if there's any questions around the video, please see Allison in terms of how they would be used and for the meeting. We have about, what, an hour and a half remaining, an hour? I don't have a time. I should know. We have an hour and 10 minutes remaining for the commissioners here to listen to your comments. So really the commission's in a listening mode. This is your opportunity to share your perspectives. I want to manage the room a little bit because we have Zoom virtual, so Rachel's here to help me manage the input from the virtual session. I'll go to the microphone here. We see you have the microphone set up in front of the camera, so people also at home can see your comments and hopefully get a stimulating conversation. The idea is always to create a safe space, allow you to feel comfortable to share your comments with the commission. So hopefully we're doing that. Hopefully we're providing that opportunity. We have staff to answer questions offline in terms of if you have anything clarifications you need. We're not going to be reading any of the comments from the chat. What we'd like to do is to have people who are participating virtually to use the QR code, download the questionnaire provided virtually. What we'd like to do is, and also provide people online to not communicate versus chat, but to come to the microphone and share their perspectives live with everyone else and join our conversation. Okay, where am I on my script? The last one was be patient. Over there, it's pretty good. Let me be patient. So let's start our conversation. Understanding the current reality. So our first question under the understanding of the current reality is what Great Lakes water quality topics or areas are most relevant or important to you? So the floor is open. This is your opportunity to share. We have the microphone set up here in front of the camera. Pretend there's no camera. Pretend no one's watching. Hopefully provide your comments and your thoughts in a way you prefer to do it. So who wants to start? Maybe I'll go virtually. If there's someone virtually who wants to start, that way they don't, you're less shy online. So maybe you'll get someone online to participate, which will open the floor for the rest of us to provide input.
We have Dr. Sandy Greer.
Dr. Sandy Greer online. The microphone's yours.
Thank you and merci. And I would really like to express my gratitude to the Haudenosaunee elder to open with a prayer, which really sets the tone of this conversation this evening and includes the spiritual dimension that we really need to honor and recognize and embrace in our lives on this earthly plane. 40 years ago, I started working across cultures with Indigenous people as a journalist, full-time and a part-time educator, just to be a conduit, to have their voices heard. And I'm so happy to see that, finally, that their voices are being honored much more equitably, and I hope that continues to improve across all sectors, including the educational system. So my concern is the renomination of radionuclides in chemicals of mutual concern. For the last 10 years, I have fought against the 2 proposed deep geological repositories for radioactive waste. And thank heavens, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation stopped the low and intermediate level repository that was being proposed by Ontario Power Generation. Unfortunately, the Nuclear Management Organization, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, was given the role by the federal government to be in charge of trying to impose a high-level radioactive waste repository, either in a rural or remote area. So right now, 2 communities are in the final competition, so to speak, and it is absolutely disgraceful how the NWMO is conducting itself. But I'm really concerned because I really do appreciate and value the International Joint Commission, with whom I have been proactively communicating since participating in your 2016 Toronto Public Forum, to continue lobbying for radionuclides to be included as chemicals of mutual concern, and also for baseline studies to be monitored. And that's also is not happening. And I am just so passionately imploring you not to allow the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission and the American equivalent regulatory body to say our regulations are sufficient and you don't need to incorporate radionuclides in chemicals of mutual concern. This is absolutely morally wrong to exclude them. And I really support that. I myself was among a number of citizens who was asking the IJC to approach the governments, which you did, both the American and Canadian federal governments, in 2017 or 18, to try to encourage them. And then there was pushback from the nuclear regulatory bodies because of their self-serving interests. And it's morally wrong. But in May of this year, I would like to give acknowledgement to John Jackson, who prepared a major report for the renomination of radionuclides as chemicals of mutual concern. He did this report, which I believe was submitted to the IJC. He prepared this for the Canadian Environmental Law Association and also the Toxics Free Great Lakes Binational Network. So I am just so concerned that the omission of radionuclides is distorting the reality of the actual amount of toxins and the interactions with other contaminants in the Great Lakes, because radionuclides are not being included. So they're not being included as CMCs, they're not being included for baseline studies, which should be done because more and more nuclear activities are happening in the Great Lakes. For example, decommissioning of the nuclear power plants, not to mention various propositions such as DGRs and other shallow repositories for various levels of radionuclides, and on, which will go into our waterway system and into the Great Lakes. And then third, there are no studies done on cumulative effects from the interactions of radionuclides with other types of toxins, such as agricultural nutrients. For example, I've been really active for 10 years and participated in both the public hearings for the first proposed DGR for low and intermediate level waste. And at that time, neither the OPG or their NWMO consultants could answer my question about are there any studies done about radionuclides interacting with agricultural nutrients going into Lake Huron. And I do want to acknowledge that I live in the traditional territory of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. So I'm in the Lake Huron area. That is where I focus on the proposed DGRs. And there's just omissions happening, and therefore I read your latest report, and it's wonderful, and I congratulate you, and I'm so impressed by the hard work done on all of the new technologies to measure various toxins. But I implore you that the time has come to also put technologies in place to examine and measure radionuclides. And
sorry. I just
so
want
I think I probably have gone over my time limit, and I'm so passionate on this issue I could talk about this till midnight, but I know that I need to give over time to other speakers. So thank you for inviting me and allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd
Thank
like
you.
to, sorry. Merci. I'd like to open the floor for any other comments here. You all came so far. Someone's got to break the ice.
I just want to note that the IJC has produced a document. Matthew, do you know when it was published on, what to do with radionuclides?
Come to the microphone, man. So Mark Weber.
Yes, Mark.
The Water Quality Board has, I'm Mark Burrows, I work for the IJC's Windsor office, and I had the privilege of working with a work group from the Water Quality Board to produce a report on decommissioning nuclear power facilities in the Great Lakes. There's an extensive background report on IJC.org, and the Water Quality Board's report, which has been published, I think, in January. And we're currently receiving feedback on it and following up with some recommendations from the board to the commission on follow-up actions that the IJC may take. That's the current status.
Thank you, Mark. What
Thank
else
you.
So, what Great Lakes quality topics or area of most relevant or importance to you? I'm thinking that the people in the room here are from this region, so we'll hear anything of concern here. I'm encouraging everyone. Okay, we have a hand up. I'm gonna pronounce it wrong because I can't see it. Oh, we'll go in the room here and then we'll go to my online line. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Baker. I'm a PhD candidate studying in California, water resource law. And recently I was found out Great Lake be a good topic and interesting to add it to my dissertation topic.
Get closer to the microphone.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. So, to be honest, there is a lot of concern it's involved with the Great Lakes. As you guys mentioned, it's a privilege having a Great Lake in this area and being a source of the good water resource for the population in between both country, Canada and the United States. As a citizen living in St. Catherine, Niagara region, recently found out the pollution would be a great and major concern for me and for my family and the generation of people between both countries. So I was wondering, what was your plan in the next 2 or 3 next years regarding this issue? I just did a presentation for a couple students at Brock University recently. I found out that having a lot of muddy in the Superior Lake or the other part of the lake would be a great concern for future, for the swimming, for the fishable, for the other things. So the pollution for me, it's a great of concern, and I would like your comment about it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I think I have someone online, Stephen.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, there I am.
There you go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. My name is Kevin Stephen Jakubek. I'm from Chatham-Kent Municipality. It's on traditional Anishinaabe territory next to Wapo Island Reserve. For the past several years, since 2015, I've worked with the grandmothers on Wapo Island to advocate the Ontario government to address the very serious issue of groundwater contamination in Chatham-Kent. In particular, the discharge and continued discharging of the aquifer sediments, which are known to contain Kettle Point black shell. The Kettle Point black shell formation, as a black shell formation, is known to contain heavy metals. The heavy metals are absorbed on the particulate matter, and we've conducted a number of tests with an independent hydrologist who confirmed that from baseline studies to where some of the wells are now, there's been and I'm saying this correctly, there has been a 14,000 time increase in the number of particle count. Most of the particles are smaller than 1 micron. So I'd like to thank the commissioners for this opportunity and this venue to address this issue tonight. Particularly, I'd like to thank Henry Lickers for his words of wisdom to remind me to think in the good mind and to follow the good way. And that's what I'm here to do tonight, is to report to the commissioners on water quality objective number 8, uncontaminated groundwater. We have failed to protect the groundwater in the Great Lake Basin in the Chatham-Kent municipality. It's a serious concern. Each week I hear reports of more farmers losing their water wells due to this sediment contamination. The wells are unpumpable. Recently, the Ontario government, after several years of advocating and publicity on this issue, completed an all-hazard report. The report was very narrow in scope, and the report was only able to come to the conclusion that, yes, the groundwater quality in Chatham-Kent has in fact deteriorated. We are at a crossroad now, and we're needing the help of the commissioners to put more attention, to raise this issue to the international level in order that more resources, more research can be brought to deal with this problem. The question that you posed tonight was very, very on the spot. What is the important issues, about our water quality? There is no issue more important when you are wholly dependent in a rural setting in rural Ontario. You're more than married. You're more married to your water well than your wife, if you know what I mean. You depend on that water well. It's your ability to stay in the country and live in the country. And we're losing our water wells in this municipality. I would like to ask for the help of the commissioners to continue to prod the Ford government into addressing the inequality that is existing here in this rural community. And it's a very serious inequality. We raised over $300,000 to advocate, to do research, and to address this issue over a 6-year window. Gentlemen, our coffers are tapped out. There's a limit to what a community can raise. And also, there's a greater inequality, and families who can't afford filtration, and I know of these families, they simply take the water, it is black in color, they will pour it into a bucket, try to let it settle for a couple hours, and ladle the top of that bucket out and use it for cooking and drinking. That's in Chatham-Kent. This is unacceptable. We have failed to address Objective 8. And I can't say it any other way. We have simply failed. So I would beseech the commissioners to please try to bring attention to the Ontario government through your abilities that more research can be brought and that we can find a solution to this problem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. I open the floor once again for the room, if anyone wants to bring their concerns. We also have a couple of other questions under understanding the current reality. What kinds of progress or changes in Great Lake water quality are you seeing happen? And why do you think they are happening? Didn't want to all be gloom and doom. Like there was activities that were done by governments. How are you seeing any progress being made? What kind of progress or changes in the Great Lakes are you not seeing? So there was all the work done by the parties. Perhaps there was an intended outcome. Maybe you're not seeing that intended outcome. So why do you think that this progress is not happening? So both what positive and negative in terms of the progress of the parties are you seeing as a result of those activities? Maybe we should do an energizer and have everyone run from one side of the room, follow the other side of the room, and come back here, and then we'll be ready to go. Floor, mic's open. I'll look online. They seem to be ready to go. Encourage those online, raise your hand. To use the raise hand function, we'll go to those who raise their hand online in the order that they're raised. But I want to encourage those in the room to participate because I'm feeling really lonely up here as the facilitator.
Number 2 is a good question for our elected officials to address.
Sure.
We're here to hear from them, too.
Yeah, sure.
Well, more specific question.
Just to keep the ball rolling, I suppose. One thing I want to mention, the cooperation between municipalities, the Mayor of Niagara Falls, New York, Mayor Ray Stano, and myself, we met in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge asking Washington to participate in the rebuilding of their wastewater treatment plant. The current problem now is that they use a rudimentary term, bleach, to clean the water, and that ends up in the Niagara River, which is probably not a great thing. And they want to move to UV technology. It's going to be pretty substantive in terms of cost. I know Wayne Gates, our MPP, mentioned earlier about when they had the major discharge, and that affected us in so many ways. Not only do we drink and bathe and fish in this water, it's tourism. And it was a big, literally, black mark on tourism as it was in the area where the Maid of the Mist and the Hornblower would set sail. So we met there to come together to ask Washington to participate to help them, because Niagara Falls, New York is, you know, smaller than it was back in the 50s. It's less than 50,000 people now, so they need a little bit of help. And clearly the Great Lakes affect many more than just Niagara Falls, New York. So I think it's a good example of us coming together binationally to you know, lobby Washington to do something that'll affect all of us around the Great Lakes. And I think it's good to understand that we say, you know, what is good for Niagara Falls, New York is good for Niagara Falls, Ontario, and beyond. So we have an interrelated relationship, symbiotic in nature, and I think it shows we've got a lot of cooperation. And we have regular meetings with our cross-border mayors along the Great Lakes, and we stay in touch and help each other with whatever issues we have. So maybe that's a good news story of cooperation. And I know they asked me, the media asked me, well, what effect do you think you will have, Mayor Diodati, in Washington? What do you think they'll say? And I said, well, they'll say, Diodati who? That's probably how they'll react. I said, but it's not, that's not the point. The point is that we're coming together for a common good, a common cause. So, good news story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Chris on the line. Is it, Paul? No. Paul, is it Cooley?
It's Cowley.
Cowler, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great.
Nice.
I'm the president of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Associations. And we have 24 beach associations covering 60 miles of Georgian Bay coastline, as well as working on Georgian Bay Great Lakes Foundation. And for the life of me, I'm really struggling to understand why the IJC continues not to link water quality to water levels. In 2013 here in Midland, you were faced with over 600 people demanding action to reduce the extreme water levels, and the commissioner's response was, we hear you loud and clear. But did you? Because what's been done, in my view, really nothing. The levels are now dropping again, and here we go on another cycle. Do you even consider public opinion? I know you did in Plan 2014, but you're not considering public opinion and expert opinions outside in Plan 2012. Why not? When can we get to work to support the recommendations of Georgian Bay Great Lakes and understand the profiles of the St. Clair River and the best flexible methods to alleviate these extreme highs and lows? I understand a lot of this is to do with climate change. We get that. But there are many man-made interventions that can be dealt with in the regulation, for example, of Plan 2012, that greatly affects Michigan and Huron. So why isn't this linkage being done is the overall question.
Thank you, Paul. I think we also heard a little bit about that at the session in terms of the recommendations around water levels and seeking to implement the recommendations in that area. So thank you for that, Paul. Any in the room? I want to go to the room first before I go back online. I think I have Jing Liu. If I got that right. Jing, you're...
Yeah, hi. I'm a Yuri from
Jing, we're not really hearing you quite well. I don't know if it's your microphone. I just want to make sure we can hear you right. 'Cause it sounds a little muffled right now, Jing. I don't know why.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm a water resources engineer with the town of Oakville. I have a general question about algae. So for the past couple years, we have algae buildup, on our shoreline. It's been a problem. I just want to, see can the IJC advise on whether, say, compared to for example, 5 years ago, the condition for algae growth has it gotten better or worse, and which way is the trending? And also, like, what kind of measure or mitigation options are being considered or being applied? So that was my quick question. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Jing, we don't really have the expertise here to answer those kinds of questions. Those would be questions to the parties. So I don't know if you have a concern that you would like the commission to bring to the parties in terms of the algae blooms.
Yeah, so it's mainly, the town, we have a fairly long shoreline, and, it's being used by the public for, leisure. And, having the algae build up is a fairly significant impact to public use. So we want to see, in the grand scheme of things, what the trend is, over the years, and if it's improving or if it's gonna get worse. So that that was more of a just want to see what kind of a pattern we're seeing right now.
And that's completely fair in terms of informing the public of what's happening, what our forecasts are, and perhaps even reporting to the public on the activities that are being proposed to deal with those specific issues. So I want to say thank you, Jane, for sharing that with us. And hopefully we heard your message, and hopefully we can find someone maybe to follow up with you on the specific activities that are happening in your area.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I want to encourage everyone here live to join us in our conversation. I have Cindy Wright online. Cindy.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having this meeting tonight, by the way. It's a great idea. I have a concern about the Great Lakes Wind Feasibility Study. I realize that it's important to explore ideas for renewable energy, but the study to me seems like it's more focused on the size of the turbines, the types of the base, the port capabilities, the electrical outlet, the interconnections, and the permitting. And my question is, I live near Lake Erie. I'm worried about my drinking water. How will it affect the water quality? Like when they go to install these, when they go to construct them, they'll have to disturb the lake bed. So what happens to the resuspension of the sediments? With all those toxins that have been buried at the bottom of Lake Erie for years and years and years, gets all stirred up. How does it affect our drinking water? How does it affect our fishing? There's so many things. And then once the turbines are built, what about, they leak oil sometimes. What happens to all that oil? How is it going to affect the drinking water? How is it going to be removed? And then sometimes these, when they're on land, they break and they fall apart and they're all over. And really nobody knows what to do with the parts when they break. And they have a life after, I don't know how many years they last, but when they're done, how do you decommission a wind turbine? What are they going to do with it? How's it going to affect our water?
I'm guessing you don't want us to answer that, but you're hoping that those who put those feasibility studies together include all your questions in those studies. Am I right?
I would hope so, but it seems like they don't do the environmental impact study until after they do the logistical study, which seems backwards to me. Why wouldn't you look at the environmental impact first?
That's fair. Yes. Thank you, Cindy. You're much.
So could you bring that to NYSERDA, who is doing the study? Because they're not answering me.
We'll definitely take your message, Cindy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is that Easy Ed 44? Take it easy on us, Easy. Go ahead. Are you there, Ed?
I'm trying to.
Oh, there you are.
There I am. Yes, I was. Cindy stole my thunder. I was going to say basically the same concerns that everybody knows, and that back in the 60s and 70s, Lake Erie was considered a dead lake. And then as the water quality was improved, one of the methods of improvement was natural sediment, settling of sediment to the lake bottoms. And as Cindy said, what's going to happen to all that when you turn it up? And the other thing about the windmills themselves, or wind turbines, as they, like she said, disintegrate and the blades start peeling off, they recently replaced the wind turbines at Bethlehem Steel plant. But as these blades start to deteriorate and these particles go in the lake, who's going to filter them out? And I hope, like Cindy said, that NYSERDA gets to pressure on them to address these issues, because they seem to feel that they've decided they're going to put the wind turbines in, even if someone told them, you know, how bad they are and how environmentally bad they are. They just turn a blind eye to that and go forward with the ridiculous building of wind turbines out in the lake. Those are my comments, and like I said, I second and ditto everything that Cindy said. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Cindy. I guess the idea here, or what the recommendations or the thoughts are, that when the thought of a turbine should include the impacts of its building and also the impacts of its decommission. So the entire life cycle of those turbines should be part of the environmental assessment. Beauty of being me, a facilitator, not knowing anything, is that I can try to summarize in the best way I can. So hopefully I got that right. So thank you very much, Cindy and Ed. I'm encouraging everyone in line here, live and in person, to provide their comments, but I'm thinking I see people working on their worksheets, so we'll take those as well. Robert Burns.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to add a little more from what Cindy said and Ed as well in regards to wind turbines in the lakes, particularly I'm familiar with Lake Erie. As we know, Lake Erie in that area is a major flyway, and certainly concerns about waterfowl and migratory hawks, and particularly eagles that fly through the area and the impacts that those could have. But I think in particular that I think, and I've kind of learned this in researching other wind farm areas, that these also create, my understanding, is exclusion zones because of the nature of them. They'll be placed in areas that are traditionally fishing areas, both for indigenous populations as well as sport fishing from anybody who likes to go out on the lake. And I'm concerned of, as much in Canada, but as how we did designate bottomlands on the U.S. side, is that, those are properties of the state and belong to the people. And my concern is by putting these large wind farms out there that take huge swaths of the lake and the lake bottomland, there could be exclusions from people accessing that to fish and losing a public domain. So I think that's certainly an important point here in consideration. Public domain, certainly everybody's well aware of the migratory issue, and now we're talking about just the structural impacts of having them and decommissioning them, and like many things that people tend to build, they generate funds and make money off them, but when it comes to taking them down and dealing with the residues of that construction, that seems to be less to the public to take care of. So those are my main concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try something a little different, and I'm going to encourage everyone in here live to pretend you're on the virtual.
Yes, I think 2 years of pandemic, made people shy.
That's what it is.
Yes.
That's what it
We're
is.
more used to being virtual
That's what.
for some reason.
Yeah. So maybe if you're at your table here, you can take out your phone and actually log in and provide your comment. So we'll go for one more comment on this set of questions, and I'll move to the next set.
We have some.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to follow the mayor of Niagara Falls in raising an issue. The issue along here is the Niagara River. You are dealing with the Great Lakes Agreement between Canada and the U.S. There was an agreement signed by 4 parties in 1987 dealing specifically with the Niagara River and the contaminants that were going into the Niagara River. We're not talking there about the sewage overflows, which are a problem, and that will be exacerbated by climate change and the fact that now 100-year storms, as the engineers called them, now happen in 40 years instead of every 100 years. But I'm talking about the toxic waste sites on the U.S. side of the border, the chemical sites. Hooker Chemical and others for years had sites which were leaking into the Niagara River. I remember going uninvited into one of those properties and looking at the seepage taking place at the time without being escorted out, but I guess it wasn't seen. But as a result of the agreement, there were 5 conditions placed on it. One of them was do not rule out excavation as one of the options, because many people had ruled that out, and that's something the IJC may want to look at. But second is the containment systems that were put in place were said to last for 30 years. 87 and 30 years later means that they could be eroding or changing in some fashion. So I would just urge the IJC to look carefully at the Niagara River Agreement and to get a report on whether those containment systems have been upgraded or whether they're failing now and those contaminants are making their way back into the river. That would be, I think, extremely significant. And there was, as I say, a 4-party agreement at that time. Department of Environmental Conservation, New York, EPA, Environment Canada, and Environment Ontario. So I do urge you to look at that, as well as what Wayne Gates in his initial remarks mentioned, the kind of rules that you think should be applied to wastewater treatment plants, where they should be built to greater capacity, whether municipalities should have the help of senior levels of government in terms of financing the separation of sanitary sewer water and storm water, which causes some bypasses when there are the major storms. And since the major storms are now more frequent, we're going to see that overflow taking place. So there are 2 different ones. The last thing I want to mention that you'll be looking at is algae has become a problem. I think you're all aware of that now on a number of the Great Lakes. And part of that is phosphorus coming into the lakes from farmland and so on, and there are other sources. But that is now becoming very significant because it's a very toxic kind of algae, not just the one that was at a stink that bothered everyone, but now there's toxic algae where, for instance, the dog runs into the water and drinks the water, the dog is done. So again, I know you'll be looking at those kinds of things. So I hope as you do your reevaluation and look at it 3 years later, those are 3 issues you may wish to address. I don't want to steal my thunder from tomorrow morning on the panel, but I would just suggest those now because there seemed to be an absence of people coming up. I was looking at younger people down here I thought might be coming to the microphone, and when Jim Diodati saved us once, I thought I might try saving us again.
Very good for that. Perfect segue in terms of our next set of questions is really gathering knowledge and building our strengths. What needs to be explored further and understood better to affect progress or changes to the Great Lakes water quality, and why? And that's perfectly segued what's happening with those containment units. We need to know more information about that. So the floor is open. I just keep saying that, and I'm going to be some we're out of mayors. So we are looking for others to participate. I'm looking online as well. We have gathering knowledge and building strength. So really, how might the parties assist you? Well, what kind of assistance might you need? What kind of capacities would you dream of having in terms of getting involved? Perhaps there's other organizations out there you'd like to see participating in the conversation. So here's your opportunity to really share what you'd like to know and how do we do things better? And how might you be assisted in doing things better? Kevin, K. Stephen, go ahead.
Yes, it's Kevin.
Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, in the last 6 years, I'm working on this groundwater contamination issue in Chatham-Kent and working with the Ontario Ministry of Environment. We made some progress. I can report to commissioners that from a grassroots level, from a community-based level, we are able to place some groundwater monitoring conditions in wind turbines that are built on land in Ontario for their renewable energy permitting. But I must also report that there are some great limitations in that, and that the Ontario Ministry of Environment outsourced the investigation to wind industry consultants. So you've got the polluter in question being able to bring his consultants in to then prepare a report, which is then presented to the government. So it's kind of like the fox is looking after the chicken coop in that scenario. And it was quite a bone of contention with the community for the amount of time and again, monies that were raised to develop that and try to put that protection in place to hold the polluter responsible and to try to follow the precautionary principle. That was the intent. I would like to say to the Commission that in that experience and that learning and looking forward and sharing things for the future, that there is another group and another path to go. And I would say that we need to look at the academics, the universities, and their ability to do research and find ways through social media, through Zoom, through internet technologies. Now that we've come through the COVID pandemic, we're much more capable of using those now in the general population. But there would be great value in having the population at the community level being able to also, as they're presenting their problems to the government and to yourself as commissioners, but also report them in a structured way to the academic community, to universities. And that has great value. That acts as a counterpoint, as a balance to the government, where the government is kind of slow in picking up the research. That brings the issue, particularly, and I bring this up to the commissioner's attention, this would be a faster way, particularly in dealing with emerging contaminants, that we would be able to then drop the attention much more quickly to the brain power that exists in our academic institutions. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this tonight.
Great idea. Thank you very much for that. Other thoughts? Yes.
Am I allowed to ask him a question?
Sure. Why not? It'd be great.
I'm just trying to figure something out from chat.
Sure.
The gentleman that is on?
Yep.
To the gentleman that just spoke, it is my understanding that in his case with the dirty well water that they had in Chatham, that the member that represented Essex actually brought that water to Queen's Park and raised a question on that particular issue and showed the water. You're not supposed to have props at Queen's Park, but he actually had the water there. And I was just wondering, that happened about maybe a year and a half, 2 years. I'm not sure if it happened just before COVID or just after COVID. And I was just wondering if there's been any update from the representative, the MVP that represents that particular riding on that issue. Because I think, as we all know, that should be fixed. It should have been fixed immediately. And I believe, and I'm going on memory, I believe they actually had like a rally there on showing that what was happening there as well, and it was well attended and had full support of the community. I'm just wondering if I'm correct on that.
Sure. Go ahead.
If I may address, yes, you're most correct. It was Honorable MPP Taras Natashak, who brought that water in and was ejected, as you correctly pointed out, for bringing a prop in. He was ejected from chambers, but he brought the attention. Also, Andrea Horvath has visited some of the wells in the area that were greatly affected, and the NDP has been a great outspoken advocate to the Ford government in trying to get this issue addressed. I must report, unfortunately, that the local MPP, Minister McNaughton, has not been, how shall I say, he has not been willing to host town hall meetings to engage the community directly. And we have not seen, as we have asked for, and with the support of the NDP party, we have not seen the proper protocol followed for a health hazard investigation. What we received was termed an all-hazard investigation, again, relying on wind industry consultants to do the work on behalf of the Ontario government, and again, of a very limited scope, where the conclusion that can only be drawn is that the groundwater quality had deteriorated. We had reported that back in 2015. So we didn't learn anything of real value. In fact, we didn't find a pathway to a solution. And so it absolutely is an issue that needs to be brought back up in Queen's Park and at a provincial level, very, very much so. And again, it really does, I ask the support of the commissioners to use their powers to continue to put pressure on this issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm cognizant of the time that we have none left, but I don't want to cut off the meeting. I want to get through all our questions before I do that and allow everyone to participate. So again, I do have one person online ready to speak. And I'm always encouraging everyone in here, obviously, maybe we should have kept the worksheets until after the meeting so everyone can come to the microphone. But here are the list. I want to go through the questions we have, so at least we have provided them to everyone, and we can continue this conversation before we wrap. Now, where am I? How and what can we learn from the efforts being made by the parties? Well, my question just lost on my screen. So wait, what? Did I provide all the questions, right, the last time? How and what can we learn from the efforts being made by the Canadian U.S. federal government, the parties? Who else needs to be involved in the government's Great Lake Water Quality Program? And how might governments best engage them in the future? Our third area is opportunities moving forward. And what I'll do is provide these questions because we're running out of time here and I want to provide them all to everyone so they can participate. Our third area is opportunities looking forward. Where are the opportunities to change or improve government's Great Lakes programs or activities to enhance water quality progress? I think we're already getting a little bit of that. We had, the turbines expanding the scope of these kinds of assessments. Where do resources need to be prioritized? If you had a magic wand and the government provided unlimited resources and capacity, what would you do for Great Lakes water quality? I like the last one. So if you had a magic wand and the government provided unlimited resources and capacity, what would you do for Great Lakes water quality? Cindy. Cindy Wright.
Hello, I don't have an answer to that. I don't have a magic wand. I had just thought of another thing about what I think needs to be explored in regards to the watershed and the effect on the Great Lakes and the contamination of groundwater, just in relation especially to the West Valley demonstration project. I know that they're moving things around, but from my understanding, there was waste that was leaking, there was waste that was buried, some of it on the sides of like Buttermilk Creek. Buttermilk Creek empties into Cattaraugus Creek, and Cattaraugus Creek goes into Lake Erie. And I live about 30 miles from there, and there was a time that a few years ago, a lot of debris washes out of the lake onto the shores of the beach. I found a sign from Buttermilk Creek. So it washed all the way down from Buttermilk Creek to Cattaraugus to Hamburg Beach. So that just shows you that things flow through that lake and probably through all the lakes. So I think somebody should explore about what's really happening at West Valley.
Thank you, Sydney.
I have no idea who to ask.
Well, the commissioners can ask who might be in the position to answer those questions. So, thank you, Sydney.
Great.
We had Jonathan's hand up. I think Jonathan changed his mind. Go ahead.
No, I
We have someone in the room. We're all anxiously waiting for.
I'm Dr. Bill Rapley, and I have long history at Toronto Zoo Conservation, vet medicine, and so on. But if I could go the direction of One Health concept, and I worked at the medical school in environmental toxicology at Western as well, and it is that we're all in these ecosystems, people, animals, wildlife, algae, fungi, everything, and we need to take that approach. And I'm with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Board, and we have a watershed approach. And I think this is a wonderful way to go, is you have to look at the whole watershed and all the impacts all the way to the lake, because we focus on what's in the lake, but we should really look at what is flowing into the lake. So the concept there is very much important. And I'm with the Niagara River Remedial Action Program. I'm retired, but I do these things. And the approach there is very good too, monitoring all the fish and everything that is in the lake. So think of the fact that we share the air, we share the water, we share the environmental contaminants. We're not separate from nature. We are part of nature. And then, of course, in the region, with Jim Bradley and that group here, they have looked at a real plan for the region, and that plan includes ecosystems and wetlands and everything. And I think this kind of approach is so important. Okay, so it's the One Health ecosystem health idea, concept, but take it all the way through everything we do.
Thank you, Doctor. Jonathan's back. Jonathan, go ahead.
Oh, just briefly, this has been a great conversation. I live in Coburg, a rural community of 20,000, an hour east of Toronto, Lake Ontario. The biggest issue we face, along with all these other issues, is once you figure out what needs to be done in terms of implementing a plan to mitigate and adapt to climate change, we can't afford to hire staff at the municipal level and even at the conservation level to be able to implement all of the recommendations coming from committees like yours. And I just came back from Europe, and it's also a big issue there in terms of not the white-collar workers, well, I shouldn't be using that term, but I mean the frontline workers, the ones that will be building and operating these physical assets, digital assets like digital twins. We've been looking to hire somebody, our local utility has been looking to hire somebody for a year and a half now, and they had a student from a paid internship, but when that student graduated, they couldn't afford to pay that student the market rate.
Thank you, Jonathan. So really more resources to do the implementation at the local levels, it seems. Any other thoughts? And just so you know, this chair is not very comfortable, and I'm thinking all the commissioners are sharing the same pain. And we're almost ready to wrap it up, but I do want to make sure we respect everyone's opportunity to provide their input. So I will look once more to the room. Sure.
Maybe this will go to all of the people at the front more than anything. I believe the most important thing we can do, you can have all the money in the world, but you got to set priorities. You got to make sure that you're not paving over our wetlands. you got to make sure that you have governments that actually believe in protecting our environment so that we are going to have clean drinking water for our kids and our grandkids. So I think the biggest thing that we have to do is not only, we should be filling this room, by the way. I think it's great that you're here, but environmentalists, all those type of groups that we hear from all the time as politicians, they should be here because it's their opportunity to talk about what's really important going forward. The priorities. We have to take the profit out of paving over our farmlands and all the other stuff that we're doing. Elect governments that actually care, that we're going to make sure that we're going to protect our water source, going to make sure that we have clean air, because if we don't have clean air and water, none of us are going to be here for a long time, and that's including my kids and my grandkids. So whether it's American, whether it's Canadians, we have to really start taking a look at what's really important. And if we don't have clean water, if we don't have clean air, and if we don't have sustainable communities, we're in big trouble. So I think when you're number 8, you can have all the money in the world, but if you have governments that don't believe in protecting our environment, we're just talking here today. That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm not saying I'm right, but thank you.
Thank you. Sure, yes, come on. Yeah, right, please.
Hi, I'm Gail Sanchi from Niagara-on-the-Lake. A few years ago, we heard from our horticultural society at Niagara that there was fracking going on in New York State, and the effluent from the process was draining into our Niagara River. And I was just wondering if that has come to light with the governments or the IJC commission, and to know if there's anything being put to stop it or to correct it. And another comment I'd like to say is with the development that's going on in the Niagara region, especially in our area, with the government, the Ontario government, wanting an increase in density. And so we're losing a lot of our trees and wetlands and this sort of thing to put in subdivisions and this sort of thing. So I just want to know what we can do to correct this increasing problem.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting. I don't know if we have an answer. However, I don't know if, go ahead.
I just want to respond to that last point is that, yeah, we have heard a lot. We heard earlier today that land use planning was something that has not really been at the forefront for the IJC, but it's something we're hearing a lot from people now, so.
Thank you much, Gail. As soon as I say we're going to run out of time, everyone's coming to the microphone. Perfect, go ahead.
Apologies.
No,
Good
no
evening.
worries.
My name is Henry. I'm a student here at Niagara College. And if there's one thing that I could recommend for the IJC is to maybe promote more to young people. So I'm only here because of an internal email sent by one of our profs, me and a few of my classmates. But if you guys want more input from people with an ear to the ground who are motivated for their own future, maybe promote more to colleges, to youth groups, stuff like that. Just maybe fill the room a bit more and get more of an input from the younger generations. Thank you.
And being so old, we'll probably have someone from the IJC probably contacting you to look for strategies, right? How do we do this? Right? So I think the Zoom thing might encourage more people too. So I'm sure someone will contact you and seeing on strategies how we might do that. So appreciate the input. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, she's standing right behind you, hesitant to go.
Okay, this might be kind of a foolish question, but other than the threat of not being reelected, are governments actually held accountable to reach any goals that they say they set? Like, I know companies can obviously get in trouble for point source pollution and stuff like that, but can governments get held accountable in any way for maybe, setting a target during elections and then kind of throwing it to the side?
Interesting. I'm thinking the IJC is a kind of an accountability structure, right? It's kind of an evaluative kind of structure where it looks at what the parties are doing and evaluates it. I don't know if any of our commissioners want to speak a little bit to it.
Wayne might have an answer on that one.
You want me to give an answer? Is it
Sure.
on tape?
Yeah, it is on tape.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Everything's recorded.
The answer is there's no credibility. When you get into an election time, what happens is they promise you the world, and then they don't fulfill the promises. I mean, that's gone on for forever. In the last provincial election, there was no promises made because they weren't allowed to speak during the election, because that was how they thought they'd win the election. But there should be a process where if you don't fulfill the promise that you're making during election time, there should be a way to do something about it. And the only way you do something about it is 4 years later you get to vote them out. So that's the reality with every election, right? That whatever that cycle is, some is 3, some is 2, some is 4. In the province of Ontario, it's 4 years. They have said lots of things that they did not fulfill over the course of 4 years. They now have a majority government with 18% of the vote. So that's an issue. Hopefully that answered it for you guys.
There's also another component to the question, because I'm sure governments set plans as well, right? They do have environmental departments that must set 5 or 3 year plans in terms of what they want to fulfill. And I think they do report it through the prop. And then the IJC sits and looks at what the prop says, brings the public in to have a conversation about what they're seeing, and then they make the recommendations to the parties. And I think that's kind of an accountability structure.
Yes, well, I wanted Wayne's opinion because, in a way, to make the difference between something that was said during an election campaign and the work that we have to do examining the progress of the parties. You know, they produce a report, they have goals, they have objectives, and they describe how they are achieving those goals. In this context, our job as a commissioner is to look at what they have done, to gather your input, and then to report to governments. You have achieved this goal or that goal you have not achieved. So there is a record of all that, as opposed to a general
I don't want to take over the meeting, but I'm going to help you out. The Conservative government that is currently elected in the province of Ontario got rid of the environmental commissioner. They got rid of him, so they wouldn't have to do any reporting. So to your point, yes, that's the way it used to be. They got rid of him, so there wouldn't have to be any accountability or reporting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back and address the getting students involved or young people. So every 3 years we do this. 3 years ago, we visited 3 or 4 campuses, maybe 5. And I remember one night, Henry, Lance, and I were the only 3 commissioners there. I think it was Northland University in Wisconsin. There were so many students lined up to speak to us that we stayed until I think about 11 o'clock at night. And I mean, it was amazing. It was invigorating and stuff. But yeah, good point. And
we weren't going to leave until we were done.
Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to schedule that in every location we go to because we have different people we need to try to contact.
We also went to Clarkson University.
Thunder Bay?
Yes, Thunder Bay. So yes, but we don't do it often enough. I agree with you.
Merci bien. Thank you, the commissioners. I do want to take one last question online, and I do realize that people do have to sleep and get ready for tomorrow and attend classes and everything. We're about 20 minutes past our time, so I do want to make sure we go right to our last question. XM Boyce or Bois, if you can identify yourself and
Hi. Yep. Hi, this is Mike Boisblenu, and I wanted to thank the IJC for this opportunity. I'm with the organization Citizens Against Wind Turbines in Lake Erie, and we've got 5,000 members, and we've been following the work that, as other speakers have mentioned, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Development Agency, is in the throes of completing to industrialize Lake Erie with they're currently looking at 50 wind turbines, but it's certainly going to go up to the hundreds. I didn't know if the IJC was aware of this. The concerns that we have for quality of drinking water are significant. During the installation, as mentioned by previous speakers, there's going to be a lot of disturbing the sediments that been on the lake bed for decades and polluting the water. There's concerns for putting in suspension this material when they're bringing the transmission and interconnection points back to land. And during operation, something that was not mentioned that the IJC should be aware of, that in operation, these turbines emit microparticles at a rate of 137 pounds of microparticles per turbine per year, which will pollute and contaminate 17 million gallons of our drinking water for every turbine for every year. In addition to that, there's a significant amount of lubricating oil and so on that can pollute our waters and so on. My question for the IJC is, number one, are you aware of this plan in New York State? It certainly is going to impact not only our drinking water on the U.S. side, but Canadian folks' drinking water. And if you're not aware of it, maybe you should be aware of it. It's a major concern that we have on this side of the border. But thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think that's the role of this, is to bring those concerns to the commission so they can definitely look into it further. So thank you very much for that. Of course, we're coming to the end of our time. I do want to wrap up our meeting. I do want to remind everyone about the process to complete your worksheets that are there. We are back with the session tomorrow at 11 to 12. So if you want to take them home and consult with family, you're free to do that and come tomorrow and bring them to the commission. We have a table at the Crown Plaza. So you can definitely go to the Crown Plaza, hand them there. We'll be there all day. Our session's from 11 to 12 o'clock, so if you think of other things you want to bring to the commission, we'll definitely be exploring questions 2 and 3 tomorrow from 11 to 12 o'clock. Online copies, submit them now or keep them, or we can also send them, email them to commission@ijc.org, or at the website, find the form and submit a written comment or upload or scan a photo of your pages. So we're trying to make it as simple, as easy as possible for you to share your thoughts. Please visit the IJC website shown here on the slide. In addition to these sessions and fall webinars, they just launched an online survey, to please consider filling that out as well. Finally, please make sure you include your name and contact information on your worksheet, because that's how we can send you information about these fall webinars. We keep you informed that the IJC Triennial Assessment of Progress Report is finished and published in 2023. So when it's published in 2023, we'll definitely, that's where you see how the commission has taken your input and provided that report. I'll now hand it over back to Pierre to provide us with some closing of our meeting.
Merci, Mathieu, for guiding us tonight through this comprehensive and very interesting discussion. I will not be long. I'm glad we have written comments and we have recordings and all that, so we'll be able to consider all this information. And I will ask Henry for a few closing words.
As with our people, we always open and close the meeting is it on? We open and close the meeting in a similar way, and I know that we're all tired, but I tell you what, I am really happy to see people here who are concerned about the same things we are. We listen carefully to what you say, and we evaluate those things, and we take them back with us in order to be able to use them any place that we see that might be useful. But it's up to the people themselves to come forward and to say, yes, we're concerned about this. I know as a Native person, it's been a long time since I've heard many non-Native people tell me that the environment is important to them. And so what I would say to you is this opening and the closing that I'm using helps focus that attention for us on what we think is important. So I would say to you, look, you, the people that are gathered here tonight, and to the people that we talked on the line, I'm really happy to hear from you. And I really think that there are many more of yous out there than just a few that are here. So I ask you to bring together your minds and think about all of the people of this world. And can we agree that they are important to us? What are we fighting for? What are we talking about? We're talking about the Mother Earth. We're talking about the waters, the fishes, the things that live in those waters that are so important not just to us, but to all of creation. So I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the Mother Earth, the water, and those fishes. And can we agree that they are important to us? I know that you're non-natives and you seem to be shy when you're talked to like this. Among our people, when we ask that question, people go, yeah, I'm concerned. But maybe if you did that, you'd start to dance and sing, so I don't ask you to do it. But I would say to you that we also think about the plants that are out there, the thousands of different plants, the medicinal plants, the trees that give so much of themselves that we live in comfort, the food plants that keep us. And all of them are trying to keep that environment safe for us as well. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about those plants. And can we agree that they are important to us? We know also that there are animals out there. We're concerned about ourselves, but those animals also live with us. They also live in the world around us. The birds that fly in the sky, we feel so in awe of seeing those and hearing their voices. So I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the animals and birds of this world. And can we agree that they are important to us? We worry about climate change. And the 4 great winds that blow around us tell us that that's what's happening. We also know that when we listen to the voices of the thunderers, you know, when in the past have we heard thunder in the middle of December? We're starting to hear that. And the grandfathers, we say, go south to Florida during the winter. Well, they're not leaving as often and as quickly as they did before. So they're telling us something is happening, and we have to be vigilant as we live upon the land. So I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the 4 great winds, and think about those thunderers. And can we agree that they are important to us? We know that the sun is carrying out its responsibility to us and continues to shine on us. And when we look into the sky at night, we see the grandmother moon as she turns her face to us. And we know that she reflects all womankind upon this world and the children that come from that. We also know that the stars are there. And as I said, my people call those our aunties and uncles. And what a beautiful thing to be able to stand up in the middle of the night and see your aunties and uncles as they look down upon you and guide you across the surface of the earth and foretell of great events. And so I ask you to bring together your minds and think about the sun and the moon and the stars. And can we agree that they are important to us? We know that we live in a spiritual world too, that there are spirits out there. And the Haudenosaunee say that those spirits can come to us and help guide us and give us the courage to be able to stand up for the things that we believe in. So I ask you to bring together your mind and think about the spiritual world. And can we agree that they are important to us? Each of us have had great teachers. And some of those teachers have not been human beings, but have been the animals that surround us. And they tell us of great things and teach us great ways in which we can cooperate together. And so I ask you to bring together your minds to think about those great teachers. And can we agree that they are important to us? So now we come to the place where my people say we cover our council fire. And we've warmed ourselves around there by talking to each other about the responsibilities we have. And I'll untie that stout cord that I tied around all of you to bind you here in this place, that you may each be able to go your own separate way. The Haudenosaunee say we must never ask anything of the Creator because everything has been provided to us. But I'm going to ask on your behalf 2 things. I'll ask that as you leave this place and proceed to your homes, your lodgings, and your communities, that no impediment is placed in your way and that you arrive there safely. And the second thing I'll ask on your behalf is that when you arrive at your homes, your lodgings, and your communities, that you see the happy, smiling faces of your people, and no misfortune has befallen them while you've been here carrying out this responsibility. So now our council fire is covered. That cord has been cut, that we each may be able to go our own separate way. But I call on you one last time to bring together your finest thoughts and your finest thanksgiving that will pile in a huge pile before us to send to the Creator of all things for the beauty that surrounds us. Nyawak go.
Nice job, Henry. Nice job. Thank you, everyone. Miigwech, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Miigwech, Henry.